That's right.
No,
I don't
yeah.
want you to do like my priest starts mass, I have to get done. Not bad. Especially when you're always late.
We, ladies and gentlemen, like to bring you forward, you all, provide
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the September 21, 2021 meeting of the Egg Harbor City Municipal Land Use Board. And in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by posting on the City Hall bulletin board and by notification in our newspapers of record. And I ask the secretary to make this announcement part of the public record, please. And if you would, roll call, please.
Mayor Patty, Mr. Timbers.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Guard, Mr. Walker, Dennis McKenna.
Here.
Michael McKenna.
Here.
Mr. Molyneux.
Here.
Mrs. Torres.
Here.
Mrs. Johns, Mr. Dixon.
Here.
Mr. Hare, Mr. Manos.
Here.
Mr. McGowan.
Here.
And Secretary here.
We have minutes from meeting August 17th. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second? Third. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. We have resolution number 2 of 2021, 201 New York Avenue, minor site plan and variance relief. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution? I'll make a motion. Your second? Second. Do we need a roll call that? All in favor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. New business. Resolution authorizing city planner to prepare a redevelopment study for a portion of block 954, lot 1, Lake Park.
Any discussion on that? We did reference to these,
Yes.
city council, apparently adopted a resolution, not a copy, so I don't think mine would have been numbered, date, that will give us a kind of the city clerk, but they directed the planning board to undertake a preliminary investigation of this portion of this property, and determine whether it's an area need redevelopment, or certain criteria has to be one of several in the redevelopment law. They have directed us to undertake that investigation. In order to do that, obviously we need a planner to look into that, do some preliminary work. It's my understanding from the state that do that as opposed to Ryan's. This is just a resolution that will put that on the city planner to undertake that initial investigation. It'll obviously come back then. The way I anticipated is these policy prepare some sort of report, present it to us, and then determine based on his input whether we meet some criteria.
We've been down this road before. It goes back and forth between the board and council. So this is regarding the, what's the name of that capital grant project? Yep. Did you have anything to add, Mike?
No, I think it covered pretty well. So that's good jobs. It's just the first round of it.
So is there a motion? Authorize the resolution. Second?
Also,
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. Next, application 2021-01, Land Use Board, Egg Harbor City Partners LLC, 600 White Horse Pike Rehabilitation Area. Minor subdivision approval and C variance.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Stephen Nemad, a member of the firm of Nemad, Davis, Goldstein, representing Egg Harbor City Partners LLC. I'm here this evening in person, Mr. Jim Angeloni, the City County Insurer. Mr. Angeloni and his company have just on the verge of completing the site work for the new Wawa. Within the next couple of weeks, the site's going to be turned over to Wawa for commencement of vertical construction and hard construction activities. We originally appeared before you in December of 2019 for the approval, the site plan approval for Wawa. At that time, we showed a pad site, which this application concerns, for a portion of the property which is at the rear of the site, Philadelphia Avenue and Atlantic Avenue, about 3/4 of an acre site, which was not yet then subdivided, but we indicated clearly to the board at that time that that was proposed to be a Wawa, because our experience is that when Wawa comes to a site, we traditionally see other users want to come to complement Wawa with one use or another. We're here tonight now for that minor subdivision to create that new lot. The entire tract, the entire Wawa tract today is about 3.63 acres. We're subdividing off a tract, portion at the rear, as we hear momentarily from Paul Much, our engineer, of just over 3/4 of an acre, actually 0.76 acres, leaving the Wawa site to be 2.87 acres, pursuant to the original site plan approval issued by this board in December of 2019. Mr. Angeloni and his company are in negotiations with a couple of well-regarded users for the construction on this pad site. And I want to emphasize that whoever comes to the site will be back before you for site plan approval for that development. At one time, we thought it might be a quick service restaurant at some time. We're not authorized, all the negotiations, of course, are proprietary right now. We're not authorized to release any of his name. There's another discussion with a medical user, but this will be definitely spoken for, and we will definitely be back before you for site plan approval for this site. We're here tonight only to create the geometry of the new site. So before we turn the site over to Wawa, this lot is legally formed. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to swear in our witness, Mr. Paul Much, our engineer. Paul, come forward and be sworn.
Say your name now, for the record.
Paul Much, Emerson Mary, UTCH, from Stonefield Engineering, located at 15 Spring Street, Princeton, New Jersey.
Josh, you swear affirm the testimony about you will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Before we begin, as a housekeeping item, Mr. Chairman, the record should reflect I provided Ms. Heffley with the affidavit of proof of service, and proof of publication, so that jurisdiction is properly forward. May the record so reflect?
Yes.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of variances for the formation of this lot. They basically relate to lot width. The lot area is overwhelmingly large enough, but neither width is required for either the Wawa or the new use we're proposing here. So your full name again for the record?
Paul Much,
And what is your occupation, Paul?
civil engineer.
And you're licensed as a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey?
That's correct.
And how long have you been so licensed?
Oh, a couple of years now.
Okay, and your specialty is civil engineering, correct?
Correct.
And have you qualified as an expert before planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey?
More than 30, yes.
Okay, I often as an expert, Mr. Chairman, I take it there's no question. Thank you very much. Mr. Much, you and your office obviously are the engineers, the civil engineers, both for the minor subdivision that's currently before the board, but you also were the civil engineers for the site plan that was approved by this board, pursuant to which the Wawa is about to be constructed, correct?
That's correct.
As a result, I take it you're fully familiar with the property in question, as well as the relevant provisions of this community's redevelopment ordinance, which governs the zoning of the site as it applies to this site, are you not?
I am.
Okay. Before we talk about the minor subdivision, let's just talk about the property in question. We brought Exhibit 1 and aerial. Tell us what Exhibit A1 is and explain the site location.
Certainly, yeah. We're just going to refer to Exhibit A1. It is an aerial exhibit. It's intended to show, we actually have an aerial that's pretty recent. You can see the construction that's going on site. Just intended to orient the board again with the site that I'm sure we're all very much aware of. Again, the Wawa is going to be located at the northern side of the site, or page right here, and then there's the vision always when we were doing that Wawa development was to have this pad site, and it was left as a green area in the Wawa development here at the northwest corner, the westernmost corner of the site, at the intersection of Atlantic and Philadelphia. So that's what we're proposing to do here. There's obviously several items that come with this site that we'll have to deal with. There's utilities that run through in the old Sixth Terrace. There's also some stormwater management facilities that service the Wawa that can also potentially service the future development here. That'll all kind of build into the eventual development on this corner.
Okay, so in the red on exhibit A1 is the new lot, and the overall black and red dotted line is the entire tract, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now before we get to the minor subdivision itself, you're familiar with the original site plans approved by this board pursuant to which Wawa is presently constructed.
I am.
Would you show us that, you
Sure.
brought it as an exhibit?
I did.
Exhibit A3, I think you want.
Yeah,
Go back to it.
marked it as A3. So this is exhibit A3, and we just kind of dressed it up for this evening, but it is the exact site plan that was approved as part of the Wawa application. Again, you can see that nice green area at the corner that always had the vision of that development, that future development, future pad.
And exhibit A3 shows the Wawa site plan as approved by this board back in December 2019.
That's correct.
All right, and the corner on the left side of the site, the southwest side of the site, is the lot in question.
That's correct, yes.
And accordingly, when we exhibited this plan to the board back in December 2019, this was always contemplated to be a pad site for a separately subdivided lot, correct?
Certainly, and my colleague Jeff Martell provided that testimony at the time.
Now, is that lot area, the green lot area which shown in red, the new lot that's being formed pursuant to the application that's currently before the board, is that area for any reason needed other than stormwater management, shared stormwater management for the Wawa site?
It is not, no. It meets all its impervious coverage and other bulk requirements.
Okay, and let's show the actual subdivision plan. if we could.
This is the submitted site plan, we pre-marked it.
Subdivision,
Subdivision plan. Pre-marked exhibit A2.
okay, and that just shows the geometry of the new lot versus the remaining Wawa, correct?
Correct.
Point out the geometry of the Wawa lot as it will exist after the subdivision if approved.
Certainly, and it is a unique shaped lot now that we have subdivided off this small triangle. But again, it complies with the various coverage and other bulk requirements.
Now, the new lot is how large an area?
33,271 square feet, which is just above the 30,000 square feet that's required.
So the lot area, both for the Wawa lot as well as the new lot being created, meet the applicable zoning requirements, in this case, the redevelopment plan requirements for the lots in question.
That's correct.
And we do not have a user yet identified for that lot, correct?
That's correct.
Your understanding is our mutual client, Mr. Angeloni, is currently in negotiations with a number of potential users. correct?
Certainly, yes.
Now, no matter who that user ultimately is, if subdivision approval is granted, we will be back before this board for a site plan approval application for that lot,
That's
correct?
correct.
And let's go back to the original site plan that you showed, the rendered site plan. Now, ultimately, depending upon what gets built on the green lot, we may have to have, as Mr. McGowan's memo points out, some reciprocal access easements for stormwater management, and potentially others depending on the site plan between the Wawa lot and this lot, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So there are basins proposed at, I guess, the easternmost portion and at the westernmost portion of the site, kind of at the top and the bottom of the site that do service the Wawa. There is the potential that the eventual user will also use those as part of theirs. As everyone knows here, this is a Pinelands application. There's gonna be a lot of eyes on the stormwater, so we're using any green space that we can to certainly do the stormwater. And then once we have a user and we kind of identify where the cross access points are, we're gonna have to develop that as well, as far as access into and through the Wawa lot.
Okay, now the remainder, there are a couple variances we're requesting for the formation of this lot. One is for lot width for the Wawa lot. The ordinance requirement's 150 feet. The Wawa lot has more than 150 feet on Route 50. I believe also in and along Whitehorse Pike, Route 30. It simply doesn't have a lot of land, correct?
Yes, when we do cut out this rectangle at the top left corner of the page, it does create a lot width at the bottom flag for this driveway that does fall below the requirement,
And that's 97 feet.
97.19, yes.
Okay. And in your professional opinion, given your knowledge of the approved Wawa site plan, is there any need for the Wawa site to have any additional lot width or frontage along Atlantic Avenue?
No, this is again efficient use of land here. We're trying to create another user, and on paper there is a variance, but in the real world, and when you see this operating, there won't be any abject impact to the overall developments.
Okay, and since the, as Mr. McGowan has pointed out, the new lot, since it is a corner lot, both frontages are technically required to meet the frontage requirements of 150 feet. Obviously, Atlantic Avenue has far more than 150 feet frontage.
That's correct.
But in and along the Philadelphia Avenue, we have how many feet? 142?
142.91 feet along the Atlantic Avenue frontage for the new lot.
Okay. And in your opinion, can users, can whatever use comes here, you will fit it within that and comply with the appropriate requirements of the ordinance?
Certainly, yes.
Now, you see, as you know, the board is authorized to grant variance relief if it finds one or more purposes of the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Act would be advanced and the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. One of the purposes of the act is to encourage municipal action which promotes the most efficient use of land. Given the fact that this is in a redevelopment area where the municipality has signaled legislatively and perhaps as a planning board's desire to encourage redevelopment, you believe that that purpose would be advanced, creating efficient use of land and promoting redevelopment through the grant of the two variances we're requesting.
I do.
You see any negative impacts from a civil engineering perspective or otherwise to the existing site plan for the grant of variance relief?
I do not, and this board will get to weigh in heavily on the future development that would occur at this lot.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, you have nothing further.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as is typical for an application presented by Mr. Nemat, it's very detailed, very thorough, it's very good job with the application. As they highlighted, we identified two variances that we require for the subdivision. Again, the frontage for the Wawa Lot Atlantic, and then the secondary frontage for corner lot, which is Philadelphia Avenue. Obviously, the Wawa Lot would be very irregular, that would be the smallest frontage. There's only a driveway and a basin there, so the lot that doesn't have any negative impact on that portion of the lot. Then for the other, it's a secondary frontage, so it's effectively the depth of that lot, free facing Atlantic, and there is no regulation for depth in the development. So, again, just have to choose the secondary frontage, technically the variance, but we see a negative impact there. The only thing I will highlight, we sort of touched on it here, in my comments, we did request a couple of things to be added to the plan, because we need a couple of things which, we discussed, we can sort of work out administratively what needs to be added, what doesn't. The stormwater easements, they'll probably need to wait until they figure out what the stormwater will be for the future site here, so they can sort of lock down where the easements will be. As I said, there may be shared easements back and forth between Wawa and this site, as they sort out the stormwater, so that's no objection to that. Some of the other provisions we requested were real minor, just little tweaks in the plan. The one thing I will sort of note is that it's, we do have 30,000 plus square feet, but there will be stormwater facilities from Wawa there, so the usable area is a little less than that, so it'll be a little tight, but it's still workable, it still does meet the numbers required by the development. So, that's really it for me, unless there's any questions.
Any questions from the board? Any comments? Anyone? Anyone from the public wish to speak on the matter? Can we do this all together? Do we need subdivision approval and the variance approval, or?
I think one vote's okay. What we'll need is a motion to grant minor subdivision approval to create the new lot, and that creates two C variances for lot width of Wawa lot is gonna have that lower portion along Atlantic Avenue, flat portion 97.19 feet, and the new lot, those 5.01 along Philadelphia Avenue will have 142. In terms of the condition, which is that Mr. Nina and mine, just work on acceptable.
Yeah, our engineer will work out
Location.
just the comments.
The typical conditions subject to any other outside, necessary outside. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we do intend, for the board's application, we do intend to create, as you know, you can create a minor either by filing a map or a minor subdivision deed. We'd like to file a minor subdivision deed. We'll submit that to your engineer and your attorney for review and approval before it gets.
Someone on the motion? I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Chambers,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Dennis McKenna,
Yes.
Michael McKenna,
Yes.
Mr. Molyneux,
Yes.
Mrs. Torres,
Yes.
and Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we thank you very much. We look forward to continuing to work with the board as the site plan evolves and as the wall was built and occupied, sooner rather than later.
Any old business? Anyone from the public? Questions, comments from the board? Anyone? I've got a couple of questions. Chief, got anything? Wow. Within reason. I have two things. A couple of weeks back, months back, we had, two homes that we had walked around, one there, and the other one is when they're taking care of it themselves or whatever, I don't know the exact names of the group home. Yes. My question is there anything anywhere about college frat houses?
So, the city attempted to address that a few years ago with their nuisance law ordinance, where if there's X number of phone calls to the police department for a certain property, for all, that are all documented, you can start issuing citations for X plus one, and then you just call thereafter, after it's to the landlord, to presumably get their attention, because now they have to come to court and pay a fine and all of that. So there is no way to specifically regulate frat house or rental property.
So they get an inspection like a regular rental house, right? So if there's 4 bedrooms and there's 16 beds in the house, it doesn't matter. None of them are relatives, none of them got the same last name.
So, yeah, the term family is loosely defined by the state and broadly interpreted. The number of occupants allowed in each room is regulated. The city,
Who takes care of that?
the city's code enforcement office. They have to do a CO inspection, a certain number of square feet per person per bedroom. So if they are exceeding that, that is something that the city can enforce beyond the nuisance. We tried a couple of things to try to give at least the tools to be able to read it.
All right, I got one other thing. Got me done. When we have people come in and they wanna change their business or add to their business, like Mr. Gunther, where he owned Tri-State. And we said all these things that he had to do, curb sidewalks. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. So there's a new owner in there now, he painted the place up, looks great, cleaned it up. But what happens from when the other guy was there to the guy that has it now? Who makes sure that the things that we impose on that property gets done?
Yeah.
Who in the office?
We have the list, in fact, our guys were over there the other day.
Since I talked to Mr. Allen?
Yes, yes, and he has a copy of the resolution. So
Well, the place looks great, the guy did a nice job, it just kinda took me back because I thought, gee, we spent all this time figuring this out, this guy was here, imposing this stuff on him, and he sells the place. And the new guy, he don't know what he's gotta do, but he has to
Yeah, he
comply
has
with the
to,
site plan.
Yeah,
No,
so the,
Have you ever issued a permanent CO for that? have you?
he's not operating the towing business, he tows the cars for AJ's, but he doesn't operate the towing
You
business.
too, for the show, it's the expressway too. The fella in there that was operating the repair shop, he's still there.
So we have to do a new CCO for AJ's because it's a transfer of ownership of the whole property. And then when they decide to do something with the other side where the towing office was, then we'll do the CCO for there.
Would it be to the benefit of the board or the city, if maybe on, depending what the agenda was, if Mr. Alley came to meetings on something like that? Pleasure with the city council, I guess, yeah. I'm sure they can. I just thought he hadn't heard it firsthand. I had to jump.
so they,
We got ordered December the sixth.
So I think that's a problem that we run into a lot here, is we come up with all these, stipulations that we put in on conditions, and they get typed up and written down, and they just file away, and nobody knows about them.
Well, they fall out of the.
The 50 Boston Avenue, we went years ago now, right?
So I wanted to caught up.
And we still, I don't think, are even close to where we wanted to be the first time, right? 40 Boston. But, yeah, but I mean, that took probably 10 years. And right now, there's the soccer going on in the industrial park, the same thing. I just think there may be a fall between, what we do and say and how it actually gets enforced.
He's fighting on that because he doesn't feel that he has enough business to, I mean, that's not true, right? Isn't that your sports, isn't that what?
yeah,
your issue is?
that was the pushback, is essentially if we have the money to do it. From what I understand, it's been closed for most of the time. Yeah, I mean, it's. No, I hear you.
I hunt there, I use go cars every week.
There's always a disconnect between, what people agree to and then what they follow through with. It's code enforcement in Donna's office that has the difficult job of trying to turn our letters, writings into reality. With not always cooperative applicants.
I agree with that.
So, they're doing what they can. I think it's certainly better the last 5 or 10 years than it was before that. I think Gus has done a pretty good job reading it, but it's still.
Yeah,
Only
still-
part-time, you know?
Well, no, I'm not blaming any, I
Sure,
just,
sure.
I do think there is a fall off, and especially not something that we decide today, but something that happened 5 years ago. Even as an owner, like, if you buy that property, you don't know that, you go to settlement, they don't tell you, hey, by the way, you can't do all this crap.
They'll bring a copy of the resolution.
Yeah, they don't,
Of course, they are technically supposed to, yeah.
Another example is the liquor store. The fellow that brought the application to the board and was approved, and then it was sold to the other outlet across the street who bought it and then assumed the responsibility of whatever his approvals were. And the first thing they did was bring in dumpsters that it was in the plan that there will be no outside trash store. Yep. So I saw the dumpsters out there and I called Donna and she was over there and talked to them. And they said, okay, we know what we have to do, we got to go through the closure, we'll get rid of the dumpsters. But the dumpsters are still there. So what do we do? Do we push the issue? The place is reasonably well kept, but that's not what they agreed to. Right. So who's gonna be the one to make the code enforcement gnash their teeth and have these people comply with what?
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, it's, Steve has to essentially just go there, let him know, give him a period of time, and then come back and issue a citation. It sucks, it's not, fun to do that, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. If you don't continue to follow through, people will just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. I thought one of the council people said it really well at one of our past council meetings. They wanted to thank Steve and the department. So they said, when your neighbor's not cutting their grass, you're complaining because the code enforcement's not doing their job. So you call on code enforcement going out, and then the guy whose grass it is complaining because code enforcement's being paid in the ass. So you're never making anybody happy, but ultimately you just got to do what you got to do. Try to set deadlines and stick to it. That's all you can do.
It's been a nagging issue for many years.
I'll speak to the
Some of it's hard too, is because they come to us
everybody cries broke, they don't have any money, we can't afford a $30,000 dumpster, enclosure, and then we all feel bad and give them the exceptions, and then all of a sudden, we turn around and
Well, that being said, in the future, and this is just my opinion, any project that comes through here, I am asking for them to build an enclosure. I don't care if they're gonna keep the trash in or not, but here's a prime example, when the property changes hands, now all of a sudden, the same conditions get forgot, and you don't have a trash enclosure, and the next thing you know, it looks like Ingalingos with the trash out in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing to cover it up. And as Donna knows, that we have been on Dollar General for a couple of years until they finally gave in, and you go by there now, and the trash is where it belongs, inside or behind the enclosure, and that's the way that it should be.
Yeah, and they have fencing enclosure, that's what I'm using.
That's right, well, it had so much junk in it that they couldn't use it. And interestingly, if you go by all the thousands of Dollar Generals that they're building around New Jersey and everywhere else, that's their business model. And every one that I go to, and I don't know how Hamilton lets them get away with it, but the one up there that you just built on Folsom Road here at 54, they got the carts out there, the cardboard's in it, and it's blowing all over the place.
Okay, I have a question. When somebody buys a house and they're ready to move in, they have to have a certificate of occupancy, right? But there's a business, you also have to have a certificate of occupancy. Why can't we attach all those things that were assigned that had to be done, so that when they come to get the certificate of occupancy, let them know this and this and this has to be done before we grant you that certificate of occupancy. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
So Donna Crickman, our office, Steve does that now. When he gets when they get a request for a new mercantile license, that triggers the inspection for CCO. Steve takes the resolution and goes and reviews the site and says you're either in compliance or you're not. So they are actively doing it.
On the commercial side.
Yeah, on a house.
Residential, it's,
And the construction official is the person that does the inspections for the businesses.
But still, the dumpsters are out in the open.
We
Well-
actually wrote up all the places that don't have those dumpsters enclosed. So it's just a question if you want us to start attacking all those people, because there are so many.
But I mean, in
We
that
have to make
instance,
everyone do it.
they started occupying the building first and then bought the dumpsters. So like we give them their CO and then they violate. Now,
But not all businesses are gonna fall under the dumpster thing, some of them have been the big
Right, so
business, like, I mean,
grandfathering in
City Hall doesn't have their dumpster closed. The firehouse, we don't have ours, I mean, there's certain places that don't, but, you know, it's been like that for, obviously, City Hall and the fire department keep us a lot neater than.
anything that got approval after that
Whatever,
law went into
yeah.
effect, those are the people who get involved.
any other discussion, comments? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, please, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.